This is a Dynamite Network podcast.
Hi, welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we are doing a duel between the characters Dorothy Spinner from the Doom Patrol and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. This is the final duel in lead up to our big team duel next episode, where we're going to pit the teams of Doom Patrol and Guardians of the Galaxy against each other.
Yeah, Dorothy Spinner and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur are both little girl superheroes with big monsters as backup, basically. It'll be a lot of fun to break down these characters. Moon Girl has a fantastic backstory that I was really glad to dive into, so can't wait to talk all about her and figure out who the heck's going to win this matchup later on this episode.
Before that, we're going to break down the comic book movie news to come out in the past week, of which there isn't much due to the ongoing strikes. There was like a 45-second Loki Season 2 teaser, so we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, and this episode is actually sponsored by the Chronicle AI card game that Jonathan and I invented. That's right, we are sponsoring our own episode because we can, because it's our podcast. So we're going to talk a little bit about the card game that Jonathan and I made.
As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic. As our listeners may know, our duel simulator is so advanced that it's gained sentience and has named itself the artificial life form for running extensive duels, just a rather very intelligent simulator 9000, or Alfred Jarvis 9000.
Is a quick message for our listeners, so listen up.
Why, hello there. Do you love listening and chatting about Marvel and DC? Then become a part of the Dynamic Duel community on Patreon, where you can choose from 3 tiers. The Dynamic 2.0 tier lets you listen to this podcast without ads and gives you access to its Discord chat group, where you can chat with Johnny DC and Marvelous Joe. The Fantastic 4 tier gives you that and more with 2 bonus episodes each month, including bloopers and top 10 shows where Johnny and Joe count down your favourite Marvel and DC subjects. The X-Force tier makes you an executive producer of Dynamic Duel, where every month you help the host choose what to review and who to fight against each other. And finally, the Dynamite Podcast Network tier allows aspiring podcasters to create their own battle-focused show using this Monte Carlo simulator. Johnny and Joe will help you develop your show, provide graphic support and consultation, and get you simulation results to announce on your show. Pitch the twins your show via email at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by reaching out to them on social media. Check it out at patreon.com/dynamicduel. Pip pip cheerio.
Thanks, AJ9K, and thanks to everyone who supports the podcast.
Be sure to tune into the Max Destruction podcast this Wednesday, where Ken and Dustyn find out who would win in a fight between John Matrix from the Commando movie versus RoboCop.
Also, make sure to tune into Senju World this Thursday to find out who would win in a fight between Yami Tsukihiro from Black Clover and Marshall D. Teach from One Piece.
Visit dynamicpodcast.com or click the link in our show notes to listen to all the shows in the Dynamite Podcast Network. But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize.
A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on Instagram and in our email newsletter for the person that we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. We got a lot of great answers this time. I think a total of 8 people called in. Unfortunately, we can only pick 4 answers, and there were only really 4 answers to give, because the question last week was, what was your favorite Marvel or DC cartoon from the 90s and why? I think the answers will be pretty obvious, but it'll be interesting to see which one comes out on top.
Our first honorable mention goes to Dustyn Balcom, who said,
Hey Dynamic Duel, it's Dustyn Balcom here, and I am jumping in right away to give my answer because I'm not going to let these DC robots come out and just say Batman the Animated Series because it is good, but my gosh, grow personality. The real answer is the 90s Spider-Man cartoon because it was just perfection. And that's all I got to say.
That's right, Jonathan. Anyone who thinks that Batman the Animated Series was the best cartoon of the 90s basically has no personality, according to Dustyn. And he's right. The best cartoon is actually Spider-Man, which was a fantastic adaptation of the comic books. It introduced kids to a whole bunch of other Marvel superheroes. There were a lot of crossovers in that show. Killer opening theme song. And the show gave us the first example of the Spider-Verse.
I don't know. It sounds kind of boring to me.
What?
Yeah. I mean, big whoop.
You know you watched that shit.
I did. It was good, I guess. Travis Herndon and Lizzie Dyer Arney also gave the answer of the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. But Colby Henches gave this answer.
Hey boys, Colby Hinges. I know these are usually opinion questions and there's no right or wrong answer, but this week is different. If you don't pick Batman the Animated Series, you're wrong. It's still some of the best telling of some of Batman's best stories. Kevin Conroy as Batman, Mark Hamill as Joker. It's the best. B-Taz or bust.
Now, Joseph, I've got to ask you, would you rather be boring or wrong?
I'd rather be wrong, I guess.
That's fine. That's fine. You're wrong about everything, so it makes sense.
I love how passionate this week's answers are for this question. How the DC guys have no personality and how the Marvel guys are just wrong.
But they are, because the Batman animated series is so good with the music, with the voice work, even with the character adaptations, and so influential in terms of what came after it for DC.
You mean like the Superman show, Justice League?
Exactly. And even beyond that with the DC animated movie universe films.
Yeah, the legacy of the show is pretty lasting, I'll admit that. We want to give a shout out to Ezra Garcia, who also gave the answer of Batman the Animated Series. Our final honorable mention goes to Scott Camacho, who said,
Johnny, please do not change the color of my name. But when it comes to this category, I'm going to have to side with Marvel, mainly the X-Men series. Talking multiple characters, awesome visuals, a banger of a soundtrack. You cannot get any more than the X-Men.
Come on.
That's right. That's right. Even a DC fan can admit that the X-Men animated series in the 90s was the best cartoon at that time. Scotty mentioned the opening theme, which is still the best theme in all of cartoons. His brother Gilly Macho also gave the same answer and made great points that the show pretty much defined the 90s as far as superheroes go, and it was highly influential in getting the X-Men movie made, which in turn probably helped kickstart the MCU. So, you know, the influence of the Batman animated series is one thing, but I think the influence of the X-Men animated series was even greater. And, you know, it's coming back on Disney Plus next year. I don't see Batman the animated series coming back.
Well, they're trying to do it with Batman Kid Crusader.
I don't know what that is.
It's Bruce Timm's new Batman cartoon. Come on, keep up.
Why would I keep up with that? It's DC.
Because DC's better. Duh.
Not according to Scotty. You know, I'm going to have to change him to Team Red on the Discord from Team Blue.
Scotty, that's strike one. Strike one, my friend. Thanks to everyone for sending in your answer, but the winner of this week's No Prize is Brandon Estergard, who said,
I barely make the cutoff of a 90s kid. I'm also going with a show that barely makes the cut, and that's Batman Beyond. I don't think there's a wrong answer to this question, but what sets Batman above the rest is that it doesn't have to rely on storylines from the comics and can still establish amazing episodes. It was a fresh and creative take on Batman with the updated style from the OG animated series.
Yes, Spider-Man, Batman the Animated Series, the X-Men animated series were all great, but when you think of Batman Beyond, it was almost like an amalgamation of everything that made those other shows phenomenal.
I guess you could say that because, you know, it had the cool animation style from Batman the Animated Series, as Brandon mentioned, but it also had, you know, the killer soundtrack like the Marvel cartoons did, and more mature plots and adult themes and things like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a DC cartoon that I think even Marvel fans have to admit was insanely cool.
Well, it was almost like the Marvel version of Batman, right?
The fuck?
Yeah, I'm just going to put that out there.
Well, I'm not agreeing with that.
No, for as good as Batman Beyond was, I think X-Men actually was the clear winner for this question. However, Brandon was the only person to give the answer of Batman Beyond, and he got points for originality with this one, since we don't usually like to let people share no prizes, you know?
Right. Congrats, Brandon. You win this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on in this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week.
And now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, there's not much news this past week when it comes from Marvel and DC, but we did get a teaser of sorts for the upcoming Loki Season 2 on Disney+, which is strange because we already got a full-on trailer for the show, so it's kind of weird to get a 45-second teaser after the trailer. Usually that's flipped around. But we did get some pretty interesting new shots of what's going down in Loki Season 2 starting October 6th. Like we said with the trailer, this all looks phenomenal. The cinematography and the visual effects are movie level. In some cases, it looks even better than how the movie looks, especially when it comes to the set design and stuff. The teaser basically introduces the concept that Loki is being pulled through space and time involuntarily. He meets up with Sylvie, who it appears is hiding out in like a McDonald's in the 1970s after the events of season 1, where she killed He Who Remains and kickstarted the multiverse. She still has the really bad haircut, but Loki and Sylvie join forces here, going up against Victor Timely, who we get some new shots of Jonathan Majors playing the character. We also see Ravonna Renslayer from season 1, who in the comics is King the Conqueror's romantic interest. She appears to be in Victor Timely's timeline, and she's holding this futuristic laser gun type device.
Yeah, it makes me wonder whose side she's on. Like, is she going to try and stop Kang, or is she going to try and stop Loki?
That's a great question. My inclination is that she's on Kang's side, and she's probably his only ally, especially since she was such a firm believer in the TVA and its mission, even after she realized that the leaders of the TVA were just lifeless automatons.
True. Yeah, true. I mean, for a teaser, it definitely teases. I don't know if I mentioned this in our review of the latest trailer that came out, but Loki was my favorite thing to come out of the post-Endgame era of the Marvel Universe, next to Shang-Chi. So I'm really looking forward to this, really intrigued by the marketing that they're putting out for it, even if it's just a 45-second teaser.
Yeah, I'm also super excited. We have less than a month before this show comes out, and perhaps we'll get another full-length trailer before that time. But we'll see. That does it for the news for this episode. Jonathan and I want to briefly remind listeners that we created a card game for all you card gamers and tabletop gamers out there and board gamers. Jonathan and I have a deck building card game that we developed over the span of 10 years or so.
And we've been told that it's really fun.
And we played it, and we think it's really fun. So if you guys are into that kind of stuff at all, visit chronicleaigame.com, which we will link in the show notes, and check out the card game. Jonathan and I put a lot of work into it and would appreciate any and all support you guys can give in that capacity. We do have a Marvel vs. DC version of this card game exclusive to patrons. So whether or not you get the Chronicle AI version of the game, which is robot themed, or the Marvel vs. DC version of the game, which we called Infinity Crisis, let us know if you pick it up and what you think about it. We'd love for you to play it. We think it's great, and we think you'll think the same.
But speaking of card games, that brings us to our question of the week. To all the gamers out there, what is your favorite non-video game for Marvel or DC, and why? Such as board games, card games, tabletop games, anything physical like that you've played.
Yeah, Jonathan and I are a big fan of board games and stuff like that, so largely this question is to help inform me, I think, about some of the things that are out there that I may not know about that I would love to check out. So record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message could be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and award that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to Instagram and our email newsletter. Be sure to answer before September 16th.
But that does it for the news portion of this episode. Now let's move on to the main event, where we find out who's going to win in a match between the Doom Patrol's Dorothy Spinner against Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Dorothy Spinner against Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Of course, you'll be familiar with Dorothy Spinner if you've seen any of the HBO Max Doom Patrol series, or I guess it's just Max now. Phenomenal series. If you haven't watched it, I definitely recommend it, especially season 2, the season that Dorothy Spinner is featured in.
Yeah, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur actually have their own show too on the Disney Kids channel and on Disney Plus, which is actually incredible for a character that just came out in 2016. I think to go from non-existence when this podcast started to having a full-on show of their own is a real testament to how cool the characters of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur are. I highly recommend the cartoon. It is for kids, but it is highly inspired visually by the Spider-Verse films. It's not 3D animated, it's 2D, but there's a lot of cool stuff in there that's very comic booky.
That's cool. Is it Moon Girl or Devil Dinosaur, or both that were created in 2016?
Well, Devil Dinosaur dates back to the 1960s as a creation of Jack Kirby. Moon Girl was created much more recently, and I go into that a little bit in my history. In addition to the shows, also check out the comics. The Doom Patrol comics are very highly recommended, especially the run by Grant Morrison. And I have to say, in my research for this episode, I had a whole lot of fun going back reading the first 2 arcs for Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
Nice, well, let's get into it. To explain the methodology behind our duels, let's go to our sentient duel simulator, Alfred Jarvis 9000. AJ9K, tell our listeners how you go about determining a winner in our duel matchups.
Yes, of course, sir. The way I determine a winner between the contestants is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using the character's statistics. A Monte Carlo simulation is a probabilistic model used to determine outcomes through random sampling. In this case, I randomize the statistics along a normal distribution as a way to simulate the many variables that can occur during battle. The stat parameters are based on the official Marvel power grid, from which the DC character's statistics are extrapolated. Additional stat categories are included such as range, damage potential, versatility, and perception in order to create a more detailed and accurate simulation. The results of the 1,000 simulations provide a percentage of wins for each character. The contestant with the higher percentage is declared the victor, as they have a higher probability to win any given battle. In an equitable pairing, neither character should win 100% of the matches. The comic book stories have shown that there's even a way for Batman to defeat Superman, so the confidence rate of my method falls in line with the precedents that have been established in the source material. My mathematical simulations are without subjectivity or bias. Feats are not the sole consideration, nor are fan votes tabulated for determination of the winner.
Thanks, AJ9K. Before we run the simulations, though, we like to break down each character's histories and abilities before improvising a scenario on how we imagine one of the 1,000 simulations would play out beat for beat. And I believe it's my turn to go first with the DC character's backstory, so let me tell you all about Dorothy Spinner. Her backstory is a little bit of a downer, but here it is. Now, Dorothy Spinner was born with an ape-like facial disfiguration and hairy limbs, resulting in her birth mother giving her up for adoption while Dorothy was still an infant. Adopted by the Spinner family, Dorothy was raised as an only child on a farm in rural Kansas. With many in the community repulsed by Dorothy's appearance and due to excessive bullying from other children, the Spinners isolated Dorothy on their farm, which occupied much of the Spinners' time. As a result of her loneliness and isolation, Dorothy developed imaginary friends, which she was unknowingly able to bring to life due to her psychic mind. Her friends taught her to read and write and told her stories, such as The Wizard of Oz, which Dorothy enjoyed. One day, while picking flowers outside, Dorothy was accosted by a young boy named Bernard Muller and his 2 friends, who all teased and attacked her. When Dorothy made her way back to her barn to find that Bernard had hung her cat, she wished that Bernard was dead. It was at this point that the Candlemaker emerged from her mind, a being capable of granting wishes. After making the wish to the Candlemaker, Bernard was found in a field the next morning by his friends, crucified and disemboweled. At the funeral, Dorothy vowed to never make another wish from the Candlemaker again, and buried him deep in her mind. At age 11, Dorothy began being frightened by the stories that her imaginary friends were telling her. Old, sinister fairy tales from the Brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen. When 3 imaginary family members tried to get Dorothy to wear red shoes that reminded Dorothy of a fairy tale about a girl who couldn't stop dancing until her legs were chopped off, Dorothy told them that she had something to show them behind the barn, at which point Dorothy shot and killed them with an imaginary gun. A few years later, a battle between a team of superhero outcasts known as the Doom Patrol and the Lord of Chaos named Pythia spilled onto the Spinner farm. Home alone, Dorothy got swept up into the battle and helped the superhero team defeat Pythia when the others seemingly died in the pandemonium. Dorothy was made an honorary member of the Doom Patrol and was shocked when they called her their friend. After realizing that their daughter had psychic powers, the Spinners called Dr. Niles Calder, aka the Chief, who you can learn more about in our Chief vs. Professor X Duel episode. The Chief agreed to help care for Dorothy and brought her to the Doom Patrol's new headquarters, the Secret Sanctuary in Happy Harbor, Rhode Island, a former base of the Justice League, which contained a vault of souvenirs from past Justice League battles. One of those souvenirs was the Materiopticon, formerly wielded by the villain Dr. Destiny and Dream of the Endless before him, the latter of whom you can learn more about in our Sandman vs. Mephisto Duel episode. Due to the Materiopticon's ability to turn dreams into reality, Dorothy's imaginary family, Damal, Darling Come Home, and Flying Robert, came back to life and attacked Dorothy for killing them, still trying to get her to wear the red shoes. Realizing the red shoes symbolized Dorothy's fear of menstruation, the Doom Patrol's resident health and psychiatric aide, Joshua Clay, destroyed the machine powering the Materiopticon, which robbed the imaginary beings of much of their strength. Before they vanished, Dorothy accepted the red shoes and her own womanhood, realizing the shoes were ruby slippers after all, and that she was at home with the Doom Patrol. When the team relocated their headquarters onto Danny the Street, who you can learn more about in our Danny the Street vs. Krakoa episode, Dorothy and new Doom Patrol member Flex Mentallo were kidnapped by an organization known as the Men from Nowhere, who imprisoned them in the sub-basement of the Pentagon, known as the Ant Farm, in order to harness their psychic power to summon an all-powerful entity known as the Telephone Avatar. Although Flex Mentallo managed to weaken the Telephone Avatar by flexing a muscle that turned the Pentagon into a circle, Flex and Dorothy would have been killed were it not for Dorothy wishing for the Candlemaker to save her and her friends before passing out. When she awoke, she saw the Telephone Avatar hanging from the ceiling. With the Candlemaker constantly intruding into Dorothy's thoughts afterward, asking her for wishes, Dorothy confessed to Joshua what the Candlemaker had done before she collapsed from mental exhaustion. When Joshua went to the Chief for help, the Chief shot and killed Joshua for interrupting him. When Dorothy came to and found Joshua dead, the Candlemaker emerged and asked Dorothy if she wished that Joshua were alive. When she said that she did, the Candlemaker resurrected Joshua, only to kill him immediately afterward, to Dorothy's horror. Having gained enough power from Dorothy's wishes to emerge into the world fully formed, the Candlemaker decapitated the Chief and destroyed Robot Man's human brain before attacking the world's soul in New York City, causing people to go insane. After learning that the Candlemaker was really an ancient, malevolent entity that used Dorothy's psychic powers to emerge into the physical plane, the Doom Patrol eventually defeated Candlemaker, with Dorothy delivering the killing blow by blowing out the Candlemaker's final flame. The Doom Patrol disbanded afterward, forcing Dorothy to enter the real world and get an apartment. Having to deal with continual harassment from onlookers whenever she had to leave the house, Dorothy was also bombarded by African spirits who kept asking her to join their world. Dorothy created an imaginary version of the Doom Patrol to comfort her, though she was encouraged by the scientist William Magnus, who you can learn more about in our Metal Men vs. Colossus Duel episode, to overcome her fear of the real world. After being attacked by spirit-possessed mannequins at a shopping mall, Dorothy was saved by Robot Man, who you can learn more about in our Robot Man vs. Thing episode. The two of them helped reform the Doom Patrol, though Dorothy found herself depressed due to her inexperience and frequent inability to contribute to the team as much as she wanted. After befriending a magical doll named Charlie, who she later learned was possessed by the spirit of a rabbi, Dorothy helped Charlie reform the Holy Grail with the power of her imagination, and Charlie's spirit departed, his mission completed. Alone again, Dorothy was taken on a camping trip by Robot Man and fellow Doom Patrol member named Coagula to let her know that her adoptive father had died in a wheat thresher accident, and that they found her biological mother, who was going to meet them soon. Upon realizing that she was being asked to leave the Doom Patrol in order to live a normal life with her mom, Dorothy unleashed a psychic explosion in a fit of immense rejection that killed Coagula, destroyed Robot Man, and put herself into a coma. After a new Doom Patrol team formed, its version of Robot Man eventually realized that he was an imaginary version created by Dorothy in her vegetative state. When the real, newly assembled Robot Man realized what was going on, he visited Dorothy in the hospital and made the traumatic decision to take her off of life support, and Dorothy soon died. And she remains dead in post-Flashpoint continuity, though Robot Man keeps a photo of the two of them and visits her grave every week. Powers-wise, Dorothy is a powerful yet somewhat unstable psychic, capable of bringing her imaginary friends to life, sometimes unwillingly. As a young girl, many of her imaginary friends manifest as symbols of her emotions, often fear, or as character interpretations from stories she's read or heard, and occasionally as recreations of people she knows. This includes, but is not limited to, Pretty Miss Dot, who has lipsticks for fingers that can shoot fire, Paddle the Sky, a swirling mass of hands holding paddles, Heart of Ice, a woman made of ice that can freeze things, Dark as the Morning, a shadow creature with a giant fanged mouth, Cowboy Doll Bookface, a gun-wielding cowboy made of dolls with a book for a face, and Spinner, a superhero adult version of Dorothy who's a member of the imagined team, the Doom Force, and can manifest the nightmares of her opponents. That's Dorothy Spinner.
That was a lot darker than I thought it was going to be, and very much a downer. It is like the exact opposite of the Girl Devil Dinosaur backstory, which is largely pretty fun and cute, and yeah, not at all what Dorothy Spinner's story is.
Yeah, it's probably like the most depressing backstory of any DC character I've ever done a bio for in the span of this podcast. So let's cheer up everyone with Moon Girl's backstory.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm going second here. Here's the backstory for Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. In prehistoric times, in an alternate dimension, existed Dinosaur World, a planet where dinosaurs lived alongside the Neanderthal tribes of early humans. Within a region of active volcanoes called the Valley of Flame, the most aggressive hominid tribe, called the Killer Folk, dominated other, less hostile tribes, such as the Small Folk. When a group of Killer Folk came across a female Tyrannosaurus Rex-like dinosaur and her young, they attacked and killed the mother and two of her children. They offered the third young dinosaur as a sacrifice to their volcano god by burning it alive with the fire from their torches. The beast nearly died, but was rescued by a boy from the Small Folk tribe who witnessed the massacre. The Neanderthal child's name was Moon Boy, as he was the only member of his tribe who was brave enough to go out at night. He saw that the flames had turned the dinosaur scales a fiery red, and the boy took care of it, naming him Devil. Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur formed a close bond, and together they fought and defeated the Killer Folk tribe, claiming the Valley of Flame for the Small Folk and protecting the lands from other dinosaurs and monsters. Meanwhile, universes away, an autistic 9-year-old girl named Lunella Lafayette grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Brilliant, but shy and mocked for her awkwardness, Lunella acquired the nickname Moon Girl due to her constant daydreaming about strange gadgets and inventions. When the Inhuman hero Black Bolt released the Terrigen mists into Earth's atmosphere during a battle with Thanos, Lunella believed she could use her intelligence to help contain the gases. She and others were afraid that Terrigen exposure would transform them, as the substance was used by the Inhuman race as a catalyst to change them into their superpowered forms. Inhumans were descendants of a group of early mankind that were experimented on by the alien race, the Kree, to serve as their soldiers. Hundreds, if not thousands of people on Earth unknowingly had inhuman genetics and were being altered due to the Terrigen clouds now in the air. You can learn more about Terrigenesis, the Inhumans, and their king Black Bolt in our Shazam vs. Black Bolt Duel episode. Lunella believed the solution to the Terrigen clouds lay in alien Kree science, so she built a device to help her locate any Kree technology on Earth in order to study it. This led her underneath the Brooklyn Bridge, where she found a Kree device called an Omni-Wave Projector that was capable of opening portals between time and space. Meanwhile, universes away, Moon Boy happened upon another Omni-Wave projector that had landed on Dinosaur World that was being worshipped by the Killerfolk tribe, who called it their Night Stone. The Killerfolk caught Moon Boy with the device and beat him to death, when suddenly both projectors activated simultaneously, opening a portal between Earth and Dinosaur World. A group of Killerfolk entered the portal and began terrorizing the people of present-day Manhattan, but they were followed by Devil Dinosaur, who sought to avenge Moon Boy's death. Devil Dinosaur saved Lunella from the Killerfolk, who had fled their encounter, and she explained to the semi-intelligent beast that she needed his help to get the Omni-Wave projector from the Neanderthals in order to save humanity. Before they could act, however, Devil Dinosaur was captured and imprisoned in a secret facility. Finding her courage, Lunella resolved to rescue her friend and equipped a series of homemade gadgets and a suit, donning the moniker Moon Girl. After hacking into a government database to find the dinosaur's whereabouts, she snuck away from home and broke into the secret facility, using her gadgets to break Devil from his high-tech cage. Together, the duo tracked the Killerfolk to a Manhattan rooftop where they defeated the Neanderthal group and recovered the Omni-Wave projector. However, immediately after their victory, the Terrigen cloud descended upon Lunella, causing her to undergo Terrigenesis and encasing her in a giant egg. Devil Dinosaur carried the egg containing Lunella to safety at her secret lab underneath her elementary school. When she hatched, Lunella could not immediately tell what the Terrigen had changed about her. However, later at school, she discovered that she would involuntarily switch minds with Devil Dinosaur, who was back at the lab, whenever she experienced strong emotions such as anger or hunger, and spontaneously during a full moon. Keeping her crime fighting a secret from her parents as much as possible, Lunella was eventually discovered by scientist Amadeus Cho, who administered a test developed by Bruce Banner called the Brain Omnicompetence Examiner. It was determined that Lunella was probably the most intelligent mind on Earth, scoring higher than other scientific minds such as Mr. Fantastic. The villain Dr. Doom took offense to this news and attacked Lunella, but with help from the superhuman community, including Doctor Strange, the X-Men, and Ironheart, she and Devil Dinosaur were able to defeat the Doombot army. At one point, the Inhuman hero Ms. Marvel recruited Lunella and Devil Dinosaur to help in the war between the Inhumans and the X-Men, which was caused by the toxic nature of the Terrigen mists to mutants. Lunella used her knowledge of Kree technology to help the X-Men scientist Forge miniaturize a version of a machine he designed that would compress the Terrigen gases into a solid state and incinerate it. You can learn more about Forge in our Mr. Terrific vs. Forge Duel episode. Later, Lunella received a distress call from space and built a spacecraft so she and Devil Dinosaur could answer it. During the adventure, her Omni-Wave projector malfunctioned and the pair ended up back in time on Dinosaur World, Devil's home planet. There, they found Moon Boy at the time he discovered the Omni-Wave projector, and they were able to prevent him from being beaten by the Killerfolk. Knowing that Devil was back home with his true owner, Lunella decided that leaving him with Moon Boy was the right thing to do. She said goodbye, and though Devil Dinosaur protested, she tearfully told him she didn't want him anymore, and used the projector to travel back to Earth alone. Sad and isolated, Lunella ended up joining the Thing, Human Torch, and the robot Herbie in a new version of the Fantastic Four, as Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman were off with their children recreating the multiverse. You can learn more about that in our Justice Society vs. Fantastic Four Duel episode. Eventually, Lunella used Herbie to open a dimensional portal to bring Devil Dinosaur back to Earth to help in a fight against the Super Skrull, and the two were reunited. Lunella admitted she was wrong for leaving him, Devil forgave her, and the two went back to fighting crime on their own. This included helping Doctor Strange rescue a boy kidnapped by the villain Nightmare, assisting Spider-Man against a goblin foe, and solving an unsolvable riddle for Thor that was posed by his brother Loki. The latter adventure revealing that Devil was worthy of wielding Mjolnir, and it transformed him into the Thunder Lizard. On a family trip to the country of Wakanda, Lunella's parents discovered her secret alter ego as Moon Girl. They banned her from continuing to fight crime with her dinosaur pet, though they later compromised as long as Lunella visited with a therapist once a week. At that time, she formed a support group for fellow newly powered adolescent Inhumans called the Support Alliance Derby for Sensationally Abled Kids, or SADSACs for short. And that's her backstory. Powers-wise, Moon Girl has the inhuman power to temporarily swap her consciousness with Devil Dinosaur, her crime-fighting partner. This process is triggered involuntarily, caused by heightened emotional states and the full moon. She has an exceptionally high intellect, stated to likely be the smartest person on Earth, and has built a vast array of homemade gadgets for her crime-fighting activities. This includes, but is not limited to, spectrum scanning goggles, spring-loaded boxing gloves, rocket-powered roller skates, a helicopter backpack, a plunger-tipped taser gun, sneeze powder grenades, a flashlight flashbang, and so many other toys in her utility belt. She can invent nearly anything she puts her gifted mind to, physically through engineering, or digitally through computer programming. Devil Dinosaur is a physically and mentally enhanced Tyrannosaurus Rex-like dinosaur via genetic mutation awakened when he was set aflame as a youngling. He has increased durability and strength, able to lift around 25 tons, and his scaly hide is immune to heat and strong enough to be bulletproof. Devil Dinosaur's fangs, claws, and his sense of smell are razor sharp, and he can track nearly anyone by their scent. He has human-level reasoning abilities and can fully understand Moon Girl's commands. That's Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
Wait, so when Devil Dinosaur takes over Moon Girl's body, is she just like this snarling creature who's like always hungry?
Yeah, she looks quite feral, actually. It's kind of funny when it happens.
Interesting. And her friends are aware of what's going on, or they aren't?
No, she just gets further ostracized for being weird when she swaps minds with Devil Dinosaur during school time.
That's funny. That's cute. What a cute character.
Yeah, and she freaking lives at the end.
Yeah, that's because Marvel is for little kids, bro.
Okay, all right.
DC's for the adults.
Sad adults.
But adults nonetheless. I mean, what adult isn't sad?
But now that we got the characters' histories and abilities out of the way, let's speculate on how one of the 1000 simulated matches will go. The winner is determined by simulations, not the speculation, but it's fun to imagine how the fight could play out. Alfred Jarvis 9000, what are the rules of our speculation?
Well, I should say there are no rules, other than the characters have no prior knowledge of the other going into the fight. All they are aware of starting out is that the other character is a threat that needs to be eliminated. For the speculation, the contestants will begin approximately 50 meters apart in a nondescript environment that will have no bearing on the match itself, as no environmental statistics are considered in my simulations. The contestants must earn victory on their own merit.
All right then, let's get into it. Dorothy Spinner and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur meet on the battlefield. Who goes first?
Honestly, this is kind of hard because I don't think either character would attack the other, really. Like, they'd probably commiserate and want to be friends and stuff. But that's too bad, because the purpose of the podcast is to see who would win in no-holds-barred action. So we're going to make these children fight, damn it.
All right. I figured that, once Dorothy sees Devil Dinosaur, she's going to freak out and probably summon Pretty Miss Dot, who's kind of her go-to when she's in danger. So, this weird entity wearing a helmet with lips and curlers and lipstick fingers flies toward Devil Dinosaur and begins blasting him with fire.
All right, well, that does nothing. Devil Dinosaur is immune to fire. So all this attack is going to do is just piss him off. So he's infuriated, and he's going to roar real loud, and then he's just going to chomp down on Pretty Miss Dot with his razor-sharp teeth. Meanwhile, Moon Girl is going to roller skate over to Dorothy and just knock her the hell out with a spring-loaded boxing glove.
Yeah, except that now Dorothy is emotionally traumatized by having seen Pretty Miss Dot just die like that. So, while Moon Girl was approaching Dorothy, she's going to conjure several more entities. And we'll go with Paddle the Sky for Moon Girl, and Heart of Ice for Devil Dinosaur, since fire didn't do anything to him. So not only does Moon Girl's boxing glove get knocked out of the way, she also gets paddled numerous times by Paddle the Sky, and Devil Dinosaur is now encased in ice.
What do Paddle the Sky and Heart of Ice look like?
Paddle the Sky is literally a spinning vortex of hands holding wooden paddles, and Heart of Ice is just a woman made of ice.
Okay. Not gonna lie, I don't think Moon Girl would be well equipped for all this weirdness, but she's gonna evade the paddles by activating her spring-loaded roller skates to launch herself into the air, and then she's gonna switch on her helicopter backpack. So she's flying through the air, and as this paddle creature is chasing her, Moon Girl's gonna pilot over toward Devil Dinosaur, and then she's gonna quickly zip out of the way so that paddle guy crashes into Devil Dinosaur, who's in the ice, and basically the paddles are gonna break Devil Dinosaur out of his ice casing.
Yeah, smart.
So now that Devil Dinosaur is free, he's just gonna tackle Paddle the Sky out of the sky and just eviscerate it, turning those paddles into splinters.
I hope you choke on them.
And while that's happening, Moon Girl's gonna whip out a hairdryer that she outfitted as a flamethrower, and she's just gonna melt the ice lady to a puddle.
Dude, keep killing Dorothy's imaginary friends. See what happens.
She's got some weird ass friends, yo.
Even you've got insults for her. Wow, she can't catch a break, can't she?
Dude, these friends are objectively weird. I don't think anybody would deny them. Literally, one of them is made out of paddles. Come on. And while Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur are taking care of them, Dorothy's going to be like, oh no, my friends. And that is when Moon Girl's, she's going to pull out a can of soda that she shakes and then hurls over to Dorothy like a grenade. And the can is going to explode and just drench Dorothy in this sticky adhesive that Moon Girl invented.
Okay, the can, it's going to explode way before it reaches Dorothy, because Cowboy Doll Bookface is going to shoot it right out of the sky when it's right over Devil Dinosaur, just drenching him in the adhesive instead. So Devil is stuck to the ground, and Cowboy is just going to keep shooting at Moon Girl.
All right, well, Moon Girl's going to dive behind Devil Dinosaur and use him as cover since she knows that he's bulletproof. And then to get him free of the adhesive, she's going to pour a soda can of anti-adhesive on him, and then hop on Devil's back as he gets up and just straight up charges Cowboy Dollface and whips his tail right through him.
Bookface.
Whatever, but his tail whip is going to cause the cowboy to explode into 1,000 doll parts. So he's gone, and without missing a beat, like after that tail whip, Moon Girl is going to spring off of Devil Dinosaur's back, and she's going to shoot a taser plunger at Dorothy that sticks to Dorothy's head, and it's going to send like 10,000 volts of electricity through her brain, just shutting it down.
Well, okay, Dorothy's knocked out, but she doesn't need to be conscious for her imaginary friends to manifest or protect her. You know, so as Moon Girl is about to land, she lands on Honey Pie, which is a beehive with tree branches for limbs and a honey pot for a head. So Honey Pie has Moon Girl in this bear hug, essentially, and Moon Girl's being squeezed and stung as she's pressed up against this pissed off beehive.
Ugh.
And meanwhile, Spinner, the adult version of Dorothy, is going to appear and manifest Devil Dinosaur's greatest fear, which is, I don't know, an army of the killer folk tribesmen who are all going to rush and attack Devil Dinosaur.
I mean, Devil Dinosaur eats killer folk for breakfast, all right? So he's going to tear through them to rescue Moon Girl from this beehive guy.
Honey Pie.
Yeah, he's going to grab Honey Pie in his T-Rex claws and just freaking body slam that thing, causing it to drop Moon Girl, who's going to helicopter her away to safety. And as she's flying away, she's going to pull out of her backpack a version of Professor X's Cerebro device that in the comics she once calibrated to detect magic beings. So she's going to be recalibrating it again.
Where is she pulling this stuff out from?
Her backpack?
Okay. Well, I mean, Spinner is still around, so she's going to appear into Moon Girl's mind and manifest Moon Girl's greatest fear, which is, I don't know, what's Moon Girl's greatest fear?
I don't know, an F on a test or something? Big whoop. Moon Girl, wearing the recalibrated Cerebro, is going to deduce that Dorothy's friends are psychic manifestations. So she's going to pull out a bullhorn that emanates a frequency that disrupts psychic energies, and Moon Girl's going to use this invention to just dissipate Spinner.
Okay. All right. So Dorothy is going to wake up to see Spinner dissipate, and all of a sudden, she hears the Candlemaker whispering in her mind, asking her to make a wish. And she's going to wish that this match was over. And that's what's going to happen. Devil Dinosaur, he'll eat Moon Girl, and he himself is going to burst into eldritch flames that just melt his bodily tissue, like Raiders of the Lost Ark style, just leaving this dinosaur skeleton. Match over.
What? I don't get it. Was Devil Dinosaur possessed or something? I don't even know what happened there.
No. Like, he was more like driven insane by the Candlemaker.
And it caused him to eat Moon Girl?
Yep.
I say that, like, even before Dorothy hears the Candlemaker, like, whispering in her ear, and then, you know, she makes the wish and all that weirdness happens, that would take a while. So before that, Devil Dinosaur just straight up stomps Dorothy with his big old dinosaur foot, flanning her. And then he's going to let out a big victory roar like the T-Rex did at the end of the Jurassic Park movie.
I don't think that hearing Make a Wish and then making a wish would take all that long.
I mean, it's not quicker than a foot dropping on you, so I don't know. But we could go ahead and leave the match there. Either Dorothy makes her wish and the Candlemaker causes Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur to destroy themselves, or Dorothy doesn't have a chance to make the wish because she's a pancake. Let's go ahead and find out which of these scenarios happens by inputting the stats for these characters and running 1,000 simulations. We'll be right back with the winner.
AJ9K, hit it.
Inputting data, running calculations, processing results, simulations complete.
I hate to see these two characters go up against each other. It would have been more fun, I think, to do a speculation where they become best friends and hang out together, you know?
Right? It was kind of interesting just coming up with the stats. We kind of realized that both of these characters' powers are essentially the power of imagination. Like, they're highly, highly versatile.
Right, because Moon Girl can basically engineer anything she imagines, and, you know, Dorothy Spinner can manifest it. So that was pretty cool. We treated this matchup like a 2 versus 2 character matchup, like a mini team duel, which we've done before in episodes like Cloak and Dagger versus the Wonder Twins, or North Star and Aurora versus Hawk and Dove.
Yeah, or like Daughters of the Demon versus Daughters of the Dragon.
Yeah, we've done a few 2v2 matches before. In this case, we counted the individual stats for Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, as well as Dorothy Spinner on her own, and kind of an amalgamation of her imaginary friends, wherein we averaged the stats of all of her imaginary friends and treated it as kind of like this composite being.
Yeah, which was not easy.
No, it was pretty difficult to come up with that average for the imaginary friends. But in the end, we ended up getting win rates for each one of the characters. Dorothy Spinner was by far the weakest.
Yes, Dorothy Spinner is hands down the weakest character I've ever done a duel with. I felt bad for her as I was entering these stats in.
But her imaginary friend creatures were actually really powerful, more powerful than either Moon Girl or Devil Dinosaur on their own, and kind of wiped the floor with both of them individually, winning 3/4 of all of its matches. And what was really interesting was that Moon Girl actually had better stats than Devil Dinosaur.
Right.
Just due to her heightened intelligence and versatility with all the inventions and stuff like that. Devil Dinosaur is strong and can do damage, but otherwise, you know, he's not that impressive statistically, considering he's kind of a one-trick pony and not that bright.
He's a dinosaur. Yeah, it was kind of interesting because a lot of Dorothy's imaginary friends were also one-trick ponies, but then you have someone like the Candlemaker, who isn't technically an imaginary friend, but we still kind of counted him in the composite, considering the fact that he was a manifestation from Dorothy's mind. And the guy could almost do anything. You know, he can make wishes come true, essentially.
Yeah, he definitely skewed that average.
But was it enough? What do you think, Joseph?
I think there's an interesting balance here between how weak Dorothy is, but how strong her imaginary friends are. And then Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur are somewhere in between that power spectrum. So I think the matchup is going to be close. I do think that the scales are ultimately going to tip toward Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, though.
So we did a poll on Instagram, and 64% of those who voted in favor of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Do you think it's going to be over or under that?
I think it's going to be under that. I think it's going to be a closer match. But that was definitely a popularity contest poll. We even had some people ask us, like, who the heck is Dorothy Spinner? To which case, I got to say, read and or watch Doom Patrol, because it's awesome.
You have to watch Doom Patrol on Max. It's a great show. And its final season is wrapping up here soon. But let's find out who won. AJ9K, the results, please.
Here you are, sir.
The winner of the matchup between Dorothy Spinner and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
Hell yeah! I was hoping
Did not
she'd win
see that coming.
I was hoping she'd win this one.
It was close. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur won 57.1% of the matches, or 571 out of 1,000, compared to Dorothy Spinner and her imaginary friend, who only won 42.9.
So that was pretty close.
If you had asked me leading into this whether or not I thought Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur even stood a chance against Dorothy Spinner, I would have said you're out of your mind.
Well, it's really all about Moon Girl's intelligence, right? Considering that she is likely the most intelligent person in the Marvel Universe, she has a lot going for her. Probably more than you ever realized. Way more than Dorothy Spinner, I think.
It's not down to the intelligence. You know what it's down to?
What?
The fucking system, man. The fucking system.
What?
Yeah, it's like there's no way that Dorothy Spinner would go into this match with only one imaginary friend, but it's way too complicated to pit two characters up against like 20.
Well, that's why we had the composite imaginary friend.
It's not good enough. It's not good enough. The system's broken.
I think it sounds pretty accurate myself. But, anytime Marvel wins, it always sounds highly accurate to me. It does make me wonder, though, how we're going to run the stats for next week's team duel between Doom Patrol and Guardians of the Galaxy if we count Dorothy Spinner as multiple beings.
I don't know if we can, actually. We might have to do a composite of her as well with the imaginary friend. That'll be interesting.
That will be interesting. We'll have to figure that out. Considering those 7 versus 7 matrices simulations take a long time to run.
Yeah, a ton of time. Even 2 versus 2 takes a while.
Yeah.
I hope you feel bad. I hope you feel bad for Dorothy Spinner. She's had a hard life, and you don't make it any easier.
Well, geez. I do feel bad for her as a character, but also, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur deserve this win. So, there you go.
All right, I guess if you can live with that guilt. That does it for this duel. Let us know what you thought about the results by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Instagram or X. You can find links to all of our accounts by checking out our show notes or visiting our website at dynamicduel.com.
And on our site, you can also find a link to our Patreon page where you can join our Dynamic 2.0 tier and chat with us and fellow listeners, our Fantastic 4 tier, which gets you bonus content each month, our X-Force tier that makes you an executive producer of this podcast, or our newest tier that lets you join our Dynamite Podcast Network. If you can't join Patreon, you can still support our show by signing up for our e-newsletter, also at dynamicduel.com.
Or you can also rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or on our website. As we mentioned earlier, our next episode is going to be episode 350, a big team duel between the Doom Patrol and the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Cannot wait for that. Doom Patrol is going down, and it is going to be very satisfying.
I just imagine it's going to be like the most bizarre team duel that we've ever had. I guarantee it.
For sure.
But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, Ken Johnson,
John Starosky,
Zachary Hepburn,
Dustyn Balcom,
Miggy Matanguihan,
Brandon Estergard,
Nathaniel Wagner,
Levi Yeaton,
Nick Abanto,
Austin Wesolowski,
AJ Dunkerley,
Scott Camacho,
and Adam Speas for helping make this podcast possible. We'll talk to you guys next week. Up, and away.
True believers.
This episode was sponsored by the card game Chronicle AI. Get it at chronicleaigame.com.